Reliance Industries reports Q1 numbers. Jio revenues beat estimates led by a sharp surge in the average revenue per user.
We should forget the word lockdown. We should bury this word lockdown, and we should only think of mission begin again.
Mumbai Civic Body Chief Iqbal Chahal says the city administration does not want to go back on lockdown ever again, adds that short lockdowns are of no use and that Maharashtra's Chief Minister Thackeray's mantra for the state is mission begin again. India reports the highest single-day increase of over 52,000 COVID-19 cases, pushing the total to about 15.8 lakh active cases. Also see the biggest single-day spike at close to 19,000. Total recoveries crossed 10.2 lakh. The Law Ministry says the GST Council must raise funds to pay states their dues. Sources say the Law Ministry is of the view that the Council can borrow funds or raise cess rates to do so. The U.S. economy sees the biggest plunge in activity it has ever known in the second quarter. GDP falls 32.9% as the shutdown causes a sharp contraction across economic indicators. But this is still less than expected, 34% drop. President Donald Trump suggests delaying the U.S. presidential election slated for November, says allowing mail-in voting will make this the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history and a great embarrassment to the U.S. A day after his brainstorming session with banks and NBFCs, Prime Minister Modi meets financial sector regulators, chiefs of RBI, SEBI, IRD and PFRDA in attendance. N.S. Vishwanathan, the architect of the RBI's policy under the last three governors, bats for a limited and tightly controlled one-time restructuring scheme if the central bank does decide to go for one, says banks must make adequate provisions. Home finance major HDFC reports a good performance for the first quarter. Net profit beats street estimates, net interest income meets expectations, asset quality also improves and total loans under moratorium drop. The Supreme Court battle between Tata Sons and Cyrus Mistry heats up. Tata claims the group fared poorly under Mistry's leadership, with brands losing value and market share. This after Mistry blamed Tatas for withholding facts about going private. Market research firm Nielsen slashes the FMCG industry's growth forecast for 2020, expects growth at between -1% to 1% versus its earlier forecast of 5 to 6% growth. CEOs of Amazon, Google, Apple and Facebook grilled by U.S. lawmakers for over 5 hours, produced documents to show Facebook bought Instagram to neutralize competition. Bezos admits that Amazon may have used proprietary data to compete with merchants who sell on its own platform. Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The top story tonight. Reliance Industries has reported its first quarter numbers. The big highlight is Jio's revenues much ahead of expectations, helped by a sharp surge in average revenue per user. Our colleagues Sonia, Rima, Manglam and Sonal join us now with a detailed analysis of Reliance's numbers. Sonia, first up, take us through the overall picture.
Well, as you rightly pointed out, it's the digital services business which was the key highlight this time around. Reliance Jio, the ARPUs went up 7.5% on a quarter-on-quarter basis, much better than what the street was estimating. And that's the key positive highlight this quarter around. Apart from that, the profits, the net profits at 13,248 crores on a consolidated basis was higher than what the street was estimating because of an exceptional income of 4,966 crores that came in due to the BP stake sale. The refining and petchem, which is the oil to chemical businesses, they were weak on expected lines because the demand was under a lot of pressure on account of the lockdown. If you look at retail revenues, they declined about 17% year on year. The operational performance has been under pressure. So all in all, if you'd have to say, the key highlight this time around was the big surge that you've seen in the digital services business, with the ARPUs, the Rel Jio ARPUs coming in better than what the street was estimating. But let me go across to my colleague Rima to give us more on Reliance Jio. Rima.
Thanks for that. Yes, it's Reliance Jio which has supported Reliance's earnings this time around, and despite the full quarter impact of the lockdown, the revenues have positively surprised. Revenues have gone up by 11.6% versus estimates of an increase of about 6.5%. And as you pointed out, the key reason is a sharp increase in the average revenue per user. What is ARPU? It's the monthly bill of everyone. It's the amount that you pay per month. And that has gone up by 7.5% on a quarter-on-quarter basis at 140.3. And therein lies the clear beat. The estimates were for a very marginal increase in ARPU, considering that people would not have had the opportunity to go out and recharge their phone. The stay at home has also resulted in pretty sharp data traction, so that too has been a key positive. A quick comparison with Bharti's India wireless performance also. For Jio, as we said, revenue growth was at 11.6% quarter on quarter, while for Bharti, the revenues actually declined by about 0.5%. And for Jio, the ARPU increase was 7.4%, while for Bharti, it was about 2%. Back to you.
All right. Rima, many thanks for joining us. That is the big highlight. That's Jio for you. But let's go across to Mangalam as well. Mangalam standing by with more on Reliance retail performance. But again, Mangalam, as Sonia was pointing out, along expected lines because of the lockdown.
That's right. You know, a lot of the retail stores were shut this time around. So that's why the revenues declined by around 16 to 17%. The street was working with that sort of decline. So the revenue decline was pretty much in line with the anticipation. Weak, however, because of the lockdown. The EBIT actually declined by 59%. Out there, the expectations were of a near 45% decline. Maybe, the company's high fixed expenditure in terms of investing into new stores would have resulted in this sort of decline in the company's operating profit. But for retail, the bigger trigger is global investors coming in, as the company had pointed out in the annual general meeting. And that is something that the street will keep an eye out on more than just this quarter's performance.
Yes, that is going to be the one to watch. Mangalam, Sonia and Rima, many thanks for joining us here with the analysis of Reliance's numbers. Commenting on the results, Mukesh Ambani, the Chairman and Managing Director of Reliance Industries, said, and I quote, "I'm humbled and inspired by the exemplary commitment and empathy of the Reliance family during the COVID-19 pandemic. The severe demand destruction due to global lockdowns has impacted our hydrocarbons business, but the flexibility in our operations enabled us to operate at near normal levels and deliver industry-leading results. Our consumer-facing businesses have become the lifeline for individuals and businesses, with our retail and Jio teams working hard to ensure that millions got essential goods and services through the lockdown. We completed the largest fundraise in Indian corporate history in this quarter." End of quote. That is the Chairman of Reliance Industries, Mukesh Ambani. Well, here is the latest now on the coronavirus count. New daily infections have crossed the 50,000 mark for the first time. This is the highest single-day spike in the last 24 hours to 8 a.m. this morning. Total cases have risen by over 52,000, taking the overall confirmed cases closer to 16 lakh. Nearly 18,800 active cases were added in a single day, which was also a record. More than 32,500 people were discharged during this period, taking the overall recoveries to above 10 lakh. 775 people have died from the virus, taking the overall death toll closer to 35,000. Well, staying with COVID headlines, Tamil Nadu has extended the statewide lockdown till the 31st of August, but with further relaxation. So it has allowed dine-in services at restaurants without air conditioners and with 50% capacity. It doesn't allow the reopening of gyms, even though the centre has allowed them to do so. The government of Karnataka has also issued guidelines. Yoga institutes and gyms will be allowed from the 5th of August. As per the MHA's guidelines, Karnataka has also lifted night curfews and Sunday lockdowns. There will be no restriction on interstate and intrastate movement. A separate e-permit will also not be required for interstate travel. The Delhi government has reduced the value-added tax on diesel from 30% to 16.75%. The cut results in a relief of over 8 rupees per litre. Iqbal Chahal, the Commissioner of the Mumbai Municipal Corporation, or BMC, says the word lockdown should be buried. In an exclusive conversation with CNBC-TV18, Chahal said mini lockdowns are of no use and asserted that Mumbai can reopen fully, but the rise in cases around the Mumbai metropolitan region is a cause for concern. Exuding confidence, the BMC Commissioner said that things are getting better and better in Mumbai. He added that the BMC was well prepared even if the city were to be hit by a second wave. Take a look.
And personally a strong supporter of opening up everything. Though we are extremely comfortable. In fact, we are in a position where we can open up everything. But things are totally different in this MMR region. And like, for example, local trains, they all start from Kasara, Kalyan, or Vasai or Nala Sopara. And they bring in almost 6 million people every day into downtown Mumbai. Now, the infection there is very high. The cases are coming very high. We have 20,000 active cases, only 5,000 odd symptomatic. They have now 40,000 active cases. So that is a cause of worry for us. Honorable CM says that we should forget the word lockdown. We should bury this word lockdown, and we should only think of mission begin again, and which is our state government policy, mission begin again. And how do we go in a graded fashion to the logical land of total opening up? So step by step, we intend to open up. Supposing we see that in 15 days' time, MMR improves, you see without any further clarification, we'll open up other things also. But everything has to happen in a graded fashion. We don't want to come back to lockdown ever again. These short lockdowns of 2 days, weekend lockdown, 7 days of no use, because this virus has a 14-day cycle. Today we have 14,000 plus beds lying vacant. We have almost 240 ICU with ventilators lying vacant. So we have built a lot of infrastructure. We have now 8 major jumbo field hospitals with the capacity of 9,000 beds. So even if the second wave comes, we are now really very well prepared. And our entire 100,000 people in BMC, they are now well groomed and they're confident to face it if it comes. I hope it doesn't come. But the way we are going for gradual opening, it's going to avoid that also. So I can assure you that things are becoming better and better for us.
Well, that's the clear message there from the BMC chief. You can catch that entire conversation with him. That's coming up for you at 9:30 p.m. A quick check of all the market action on the Lal Street, where the markets declined for the second day in a row and expiry day saw volatility. Both the Nifty and the Sensex logging cuts of about 1% each, with the Nifty managing to stay just above 11,100. The Sensex saw cuts of over 300 points. Financial stocks were the big laggards in trade, with the Nifty Bank down about 2%. Mid-caps also falling in line with benchmark indices. Earnings corner. Mortgage lender HDFC reporting its earnings for Q1, holding up well in terms of growth. Net profit coming in at about 3,000 crore rupees. That was above estimates. Net interest income was in line with street expectations. Asset quality also saw an improvement. Gross NPAs fell to 1.87%. Margins were weak. They fell to their lowest level of 3.1%. HDFC has also seen a decline in loans under moratorium, both individual and corporate. In terms of assets under management, the lender has recorded a healthy growth of 11% despite the lockdown. Dabur has reported Q1 numbers which are ahead of street estimates on all counts. Revenues coming in at 1,980 crore rupees, profit at a little over 340 crores. The company also reported an EBITDA margin at 21% versus expectations of a little over 20% compared to the year-ago period. Revenue down 13% and profit has dipped close to 6%. Well, a quick check of some of the other headlines that we're tracking this evening. A day after his brainstorming session with banks and NBFCs, Prime Minister Modi has met financial sector regulators, the chiefs of RBI, SEBI, IRDA and PFRDA in attendance. Market research firm Nielsen slashes the FMCG industry's growth forecast for 2020, expects growth at between -1% to 1% versus its earlier forecast of 5 to 6% growth. NS Vishwanathan, the architect of the RBI's policy under the last 3 governors, bats for a limited and tightly controlled one-time restructuring scheme. If the central bank does decide to announce it, says banks must make adequate provisions.
If restructuring is to be done, it has to be a very, very tightly regulated one. It can't be a very open-ended one. It cannot, it must have very tight conditionalities in terms of eligibility, contours, etc., than what had happened in the CDR time. Because I think the most important lesson we need to learn from, the 2008 on restructuring that happened was, we do not want to actually push the can down.
Well, that is the veteran central banker and former RBI DG N.S. Vishwanathan on the perils of the restructuring scheme, saying it must be a very tightly regulated one if the Reserve Bank does go down that road. The U.S. economy has seen the biggest plunge in activity it has ever known in the second quarter. GDP falls 32.9% as the shutdown has caused a sharp contraction across economic indicators, but this is still lower than the expected 34% drop. U.S. weekly jobless claims rise for a second straight week to 1.4 million. This is the 19th straight week in which initial claims totaled to at least 1 million. And in the midst of all of this disappointing news on the economy, President Donald Trump suggests delaying the U.S. presidential election slated for November, says allowing mail-in voting will make this the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history and a great embarrassment to the U.S. Well, never a dull moment when it comes to President Trump, at least not on Twitter. Now, the legal battle between Tata Sons and Cyrus Mistry is heating up at the Supreme Court after Cyrus Mistry accused the Tatas of withholding information about going private. Tata Sons have responded. In an affidavit, the Tatas have claimed that the company's performance was poor under Mistry's leadership. Ashmit Kumar joins us now. Ashmit, take us through the arguments that are being made by the Tatas in that affidavit.
Right, so the fiery exchanges continue between the two sides, Ratan Tata and Tata Sons on one hand, and Cyrus Mistry and the Palonji Group on the other. Now, Tata Sons, we understand today, has filed a fresh rejoinder in the Apex Court in their ongoing battle in the Apex Court, and in doing so, they've kept up the momentum in terms of making charges, making allegations. The latest charges that they have leveled is that Cyrus Mistry was a poor performer. They've made references to various data points to suggest that the Tata Group was doing very poorly. They point out that Tata Sons, in fact, the performance was lower than the Sensex returns. They pointed out that under Ratan Tata's watch, between 1991 and 2014, under his watch, the market capitalization of the group grew from 8,000 crores to over 5 lakh crore rupees, suggesting a 60 times increase. They also go on to say that Tata Motors did very poorly, both the CV as well as the PV segment, that TTSL almost collapsed under his watch. They also point out that after Cyrus Mistry, after he was done away with, after the board decided to oust him, the group after that has been doing very well. They point out that there has been incremental revenue of 70,000 per annum since his departure. They point out that there has been investment of over 28,000 crore rupees into Tata Group companies, that the market capitalization is up by over 30%, suggesting that the group is in fact doing better since the ouster of Cyrus Mistry. So again, a slew of charges being made. Of course, the playing field here is the Apex Court. The Supreme Court will take up these considerations and will decide. Just to give our viewers some perspective, let's keep in mind that Cyrus Mistry is challenging seeking proportionate representation on the Tata Sons board. Tata Sons, of course, are challenging the NCLAT judgment that reinstated Cyrus Mistry as the executive chairperson of Tata Sons. Back to you.
All right, Ashmit, many thanks for giving us that latest update in the battle between the Tatas and Cyrus Mistry. We will take a break, but there's a lot more coming up. The CEOs of Amazon, Google, Apple and Facebook are grilled by US lawmakers for over 5 hours in an unprecedented hearing. More on that when we get back. The CEOs of the 4 biggest tech companies appear before the Antitrust Subcommittee of the U.S. Congress to answer lawmakers' concerns that companies have too much power, limit innovation and choke consumer choices. Appearing before the Antitrust Committee via WebEx, where Amazon's Jeff Bezos, Google's Sundar Pichai, Apple's Tim Cook and Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg. Kayla Tush brings us up to speed with what transpired during that very heated hearing. Kayla.
In 5 hours of bruising and at times very specific questioning, Republicans challenged Apple, Amazon, Facebook and Alphabet on political censorship as Democrats focused on the size and power these companies have amassed. Here's the subcommittee chair, David Cicilline.
Our founders would not bow before a king, nor should we bow before the emperors of the online economy.
These 4 horsemen of the technology industry responded in kind, saying, in fact, in each of their respective industries, there's a lot of competition.
Competition drives us to innovate, and it also leads to better products, lower choices, and more choices for everyone.
Customers have a lot of choices, and then our products face fierce competition. Companies like Samsung, LG, Huawei, and Google have built successful businesses with different approaches. We're okay with that.
I recognize that there are concerns about the size and power of tech companies. Our services are about connection, and our business model is advertising, and we face intense competition in both.
The executives largely sidestepped controversy as lawmakers probed App Store pricing, China policy, counterfeit goods, and content policing. Amazon's Jeff Bezos acknowledged aggressive pricing to promote the company's own products, but said it doesn't use sellers' data to do that.
I can't answer that question yes or no. What I can tell you is we have a policy against using seller-specific data to aid our private label business, but I can't guarantee you that that policy has never been violated.
Perhaps the most direct questioning about these companies' market share went to Mark Zuckerberg. The full committee's chair, Jerry Nadler, homed in on the 2012 acquisition of Instagram and Facebook's potential buyout of a one-time competitor. Zuckerberg said that in 2012, the government had the same information it did, and the Federal Trade Commission unanimously approved the merger.
Well, it's not every day that you will see 4 of those tech CEOs answering questions, uncomfortable ones as well. But that's the beauty of how it works in the US. Now, the Law Ministry has told the Finance Ministry that the centre has no obligation to compensate states for losses incurred due to natural disaster or economic distress for COVID-19. Remember, the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent lockdown has taken a toll on the centre's GST collections. The Attorney General, India's top law officer, has told the Finance Ministry that it is the GST Council which has to decide on how the council wishes to compensate states for revenue foregone. Timsy joins us now with more. Timsy, this is going to be a heated conversation as and when it gets taken up by the GST Council.
Well, the upcoming GST Council is all set for a heated discussion on how and where to arrange funds from to meet the compensation requirement for the states. However, a date of the council is yet to be decided, but Finance Ministry sources say that the North Bloc has got a formal response from the Law Ministry that the GST Council itself needs to discuss the issue and find a solution to this problem. If the council decides to do market borrowing, then council can recommend to the centre to allow states to borrow on the strength of future receipts under the compensation fund. For this, however, the central government will have to take a final decision under Article 293(3) of the Constitution, implying that any borrowing, if at all needed, then this has to be the states who have to borrow and not the centre. Apart from this, the legal view also says that the states can be compensated from either of the compensation cess kitty or any other such fund under the GST ambit, which according to the GST law is either the amount collected as penalty or as the GST appropriation fund. However, we've seen in the last installment that the GST-IGST appropriation fund has already been exhausted. Meanwhile, the suggestions given by the states to the centre is to raise funds either by council going for a market borrowing or by increasing the cess rates and including more items, or go for a complete overhauling of the entire rate structure. Let's see what happens finally when the council meets, as all these options look like a tough call for both either the centre or the state. Back to you.
All right, Timsy, many thanks for joining us. A quick check of some of the other national and global headlines. A priest and over 10 policemen at Ayodhya's Ram Janmabhoomi complex have tested positive for COVID-19. The groundbreaking ceremony for the Ram temple is expected on the 5th of August. Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to attend the event along with 50 VIPs. The Rajasthan High Court issues notice to the Speaker and Secretary of the Legislative Assembly and 6 BSP MLAs in connection with the merger of the BSP MLAs with the Congress party in the state. The court asked them to file a reply by the 11th of August. In global headlines, coronavirus pushes the German economy into record recession, with growth contracting at the steepest rate in the second quarter as consumer spending, company investment and exports all collapse, wiping out nearly 10 years of growth. China's ambassador to India says self-protection and non-tariff barriers by India in violation of WTO rules, adds that economic retaliation should not be a zero-sum game. Further says that border troops have disengaged at most locations and China does not want to escalate the situation. Also adds the dragon-elephant tango is the best way forward. Well, on to some tech news now. Glass technology company Corning has launched its latest flagship product. It's called Gorilla Glass Victus. If you're wondering what Corning is, just pull out your smartphone or your tablet, and there is a high chance that a Corning Gorilla Glass is sitting on top of your device. Megha caught up with John Bain, Senior Vice President and General Manager at Corning, to talk about the new product launch and what the eventual transition to 5G could mean for the company. Listen in.
Well, glass science is very complicated, as you can imagine, and the design cycle is somewhat long. So we announced Gorilla Glass 6, our prior flagship product, in 2018, but we already had successive generations of Gorilla Glass in the roadmap, in the pipeline, so to speak. And we start with thousands of compositions, and then we do computer modeling, and we do testing, and we narrow it down to a few candidates and melt those glasses to come up with the ultimate glass. So that's a somewhat long process, about 2 years, sometimes a little bit longer. So we've been working on this glass for quite some time, and decided this was the right time to bring it to the market. Roughly every 2 years, we bring a new product to market because it's so important to keep innovating and stay ahead of the competition, and the consumer deserves the improved performance on their device.
Now let's talk about the next big change in the ecosystem that is pretty much going to disrupt the entire industry, and that is, of course, 5G. In fact, just recently in India, Reliance Jio announced its partnership with Google to produce an affordable 5G-enabled smartphone, and that is probably going to be in the hands of the next billion people, and it will help them come online right here in India. In fact, Jio also announced the fact that this would be India's first fully made-in-India 5G network infrastructure that it will set up, and it will be deployed and launched in 1 year once the spectrum is available. So another big opportunity opening up for players like you. How do you plan to make the most of this?
Well, Corning is a large diversified specialty materials company, and one of our biggest businesses, actually maybe our biggest, is optical fiber and optical cable and wireless routing networks. So we make a lot of gear that goes into the 5G network. So we're seeing an increase in demand for our optical fiber, our optical cable, and our connector products to support 5G. So that's very, very strong for Corning. Now, with respect to the Gorilla business, we expect people begin to upgrade their smartphones who want that 5G capability. And as they do that, they'll obviously want the best protection, which Gorilla Glass offers, but also as on the back of a handset, it becomes very important what material is there. Metal is not good for 5G transparency or RF transparency. So metal is really on the wrong side of the technology curve. Glass and plastic are very good options, but at 5G, the data rates are so high, you start to get thermal challenges. And we've actually seen some studies where the heat impact of 5G can cause calls to be dropped, and the actual network goes from 5G to 4G if plastic is used as a back material. So we think 5G will be another driver for more glass in the device, not only on the front, where it's historically been, but also as a back cover material.
Well, that's the latest there on Corning and the Gorilla Glass and 5G. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Many thanks for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC-TV18. The news will continue.